The gunshot that shattered the morning calm wasn't meant for Helena Campbell, but the bullet that followed her refusal to sell her family's ranch to Marcus Thornton certainly was. She dove behind the water trough outside the general store in Cody, Wyoming, her heart hammering as wood splintered above her head. The year 1885 proving once again that a woman alone was considered easy prey in this untamed territory. Through the chaos and screaming townsfolk, a tall figure moved with deliberate purpose, his hand already on his revolver, and within 3 heartbeats, the threat was neutralized. Thornton's hired gun disarmed and face down in the dirt before Helena even caught her breath. "You hurt, miss." The voice carried the low rumble of distant thunder, and Helena looked up into eyes the color of storm clouds, set in a sun-weathered face beneath a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed features too honest for the violence she just witnessed from him. "I'm fine," she managed, though her hands shook as she accepted the calloused palm he offered. His grip was firm but gentle, releasing her the moment she found her footing, as though he understood the terror still coursing through her veins wasn't just from the bullets. "Cole Lawson," he said simply, tipping his hat. "I work the Patterson spread east of town. Heard Thornton's been making trouble for you." Helena brushed dust from her simple blue dress, trying to reclaim some dignity even as her knees threatened to buckle. "You heard correctly. He wants my land. Seems to think my father's death means I'll just hand over everything we built." Her voice came out stronger than she felt, and something like approval flickered across the cowboy's face. "A woman's got the right to refuse," Cole said, his words measured but carrying an edge that suggested he'd thought deeply about such things. "Your consent wasn't asked for because Thornton figures it's not needed. That's wrong thinking, and it leads to wrong actions." The sheriff arrived then, huffing and red-faced, 15 minutes too late as usual. Cole gave a concise account of events, his testimony backed by a dozen witnesses who'd seen Thornton's man draw first. Helena watched the cowboy's profile as he spoke, noting the scar that traced his jawline and the way his shoulders stayed relaxed despite the tension in the gathered crowd. He was perhaps 25, maybe a year or two older than her own 23, and he carried himself like a man who'd seen enough trouble to respect it but not fear it. "Miss Campbell, you'll need to give a statement too," the sheriff said, finally acknowledging her presence. "Then ask her permission first," Cole interjected quietly. "She's had a shock. Maybe let her sit down, get some water before you start demanding things." The sheriff's mustache twitched with irritation, but he softened his tone. "Would you mind, Miss Campbell, if we talked about what happened? Take your time, and we can do it inside where it's comfortable." Such a small thing, that asking, but it steadied Helena more than the water someone pressed into her hands. She gave her statement in the sheriff's office while Cole waited outside, and when she emerged an hour later, exhausted and wrung out, she was surprised to find him still there, leaning against the hitching post with his horse, a fine buckskin gelding with intelligent eyes. "Can I see you home?" he asked. "Thornton's got more than one hired gun, and you've embarrassed him today. Man like that doesn't take kindly to being crossed, especially not by a woman who won't bend." Helena should have said no, should have insisted on her independence as she had for the 6 months since her father's passing. But the sun was already climbing toward noon. The 3-mile ride to her ranch suddenly seemed impossibly far, and something about this quiet cowboy made her feel less alone than she had in half a year. "I'd appreciate that," she admitted. "My horse is at the livery." They walked the 2 blocks in silence, Helena acutely aware of the curious stares from townspeople who'd watched the morning's drama. Cole's presence beside her felt like a shield, not because he was large or intimidating, but because he moved through the world with the kind of confidence that suggested he knew exactly who he was and saw no need to prove it. The livery owner, a grizzled man named Potter, already had Helena's mare saddled. "Figured you'd want to head home quick after all that excitement," he said, waving away her offered payment. "No charge today, Miss Campbell. Your father was a good man, and you're doing him proud standing up to Thornton." The ride out of Cody began in silence, both horses content to walk rather than run in the building heat. Helena's ranch, the Double C, spread across a valley where the Shoshone River carved through grassland her grandfather had claimed in 1868. It was good water, good grazing, and that was exactly why Marcus Thornton wanted it. His own spread bordered hers to the west, 3 times the size but with water rights that depended on her cooperation. "You've been fighting him alone?" Cole asked after a mile had passed. "I have 2 ranch hands," Helena said. "Good men, both of them, but they're cowboys, not gunfighters. My father never hired guns. He believed honest work and fair dealing would see a person through." She heard the bitterness creep into her voice and couldn't suppress it. "That worked fine while he was alive. Dead 6 months, and Thornton's trying to force me out through intimidation, legal tricks, and now bullets." "Your consent wasn't asked for because it was not needed," Cole repeated, his voice hardening. "That's the thinking that turns decent country into a place where only the ruthless survive. It should always be asked. A person's choices belong to them, whether it's land or anything else, especially when it's a woman being pressured by men who figure she's got no right to refuse." Helena studied him with open curiosity now. "That's unusual talk from a cowboy. Most men I know figure a woman alone is an unnatural thing that needs correcting. Most men are fools." Cole's response was blunt enough to startle a laugh from her. "My mother ran our family farm in Kansas after my father died. She did it alone for 12 years, fighting weather, banks, and neighbors who thought they could take advantage. I was 10 when he passed. I learned early that courage and capability don't have anything to do with whether you're wearing a dress or trousers. What brought you to Wyoming?" "She died 3 years back, pneumonia." The pain in his voice was still fresh, and Helena understood that kind of grief intimately. "Sold the farm because I couldn't stand to work it without her. Drifted west, worked ranches from Missouri to here. Patterson hired me last spring. It's good work, fair pay, and the country suits me." They crested a rise, and Helena's ranch spread before them, the simple log house and barn her father had built looking small against the vast backdrop of mountains to the west. She felt the familiar swell of love for this place, mixed with the equally familiar fear that she'd lose it. "That's home," she said softly. "Every board, every fence post represents years of my family's sweat and hope. Thornton thinks he can just erase that because he's got money and I'm alone." Cole was quiet for a long moment, his eyes scanning the property with the practiced assessment of a man who understood ranching. "You've got water, good grass, and those holding pens look solid. How many head are you running?" 240 cattle, 30 horses. "It's not a big operation, but it's profitable enough to keep going. I've got a contract to supply beef to Fort Yellowstone, and the Army pays fair prices." "That's what Thornton really wants," Cole said with sudden understanding. "The military contract. He's been trying to undercut the supply chain, buying up every ranch with those connections." Helena nodded grimly. "He offered me $5,000 for everything. The land alone is worth 3 times that, never mind the stock and buildings and contract rights. When I refused, he told me I'd regret being stubborn. I thought he meant lawyers and paperwork. Apparently, he's escalated." They rode down to the ranch house, where 2 men emerged from the barn. Will Carter was 45, built like a barrel and twice as tough, while his younger partner, Sam Brooks, was barely 20 but already proving his worth. Both men relaxed visibly when they saw Cole alongside Helena. "Heard there was shooting in town," Will said without preamble. "You all right, Miss Helena?" She dismounted, taking comfort in the familiar routine of loosening her mare's cinch and pulling the saddle. "Thornton sent someone to make his point with bullets. This is Cole Lawson. He works for Patterson. He made sure I got home safe." Will's handshake with Cole was assessing, the kind of evaluation one working man gives another. Whatever he saw satisfied him, because he nodded and turned back to Helena. "We've had riders along the western fence line the past 2 days. Haven't cut wire yet, but they're making their presence known." "Intimidation," Cole said, "building up to something bigger. Miss Campbell, if you don't mind me speaking plainly, you need more help. 2 men can't watch this whole spread, and now Thornton knows you'll stand against him in public. He'll see that as a challenge." "I can't afford hired guns," Helena said tiredly. "Every dollar I have is tied up in keeping this place running until I can sell the fall calves. I'm not talking about guns for hire. I'm talking about neighbors helping neighbors if you'll accept the help." Cole's expression was carefully neutral, and Helena realized he was doing exactly what he'd advocated in town, asking for her consent rather than assuming anything. Patterson's a fair man. He's got no love for Thornton's tactics, and he said more than once that what's happening to you could happen to any of us if we let bullies run unchecked. I could talk to him about sending a couple of hands over, at least until things settle down. Pride warred with practicality in Helena's chest. She'd fought so hard to prove she could manage alone, to show the territory that Helena Campbell was her father's daughter in more than name. But pride was cold comfort if she ended up shot or burned out of her home. "Why would you do that?" she asked. "You don't know me." Cole met her gaze steadily. "Because what's happening to you is wrong. Because consent matters, whether it's about land or labor or anything else. Because I watched my mother fight alone when she shouldn't have had to, and I swore I'd never stand by when I could help." He paused, then added with careful honesty, "And because in the hour I've spent in your company, I've seen more courage and integrity than I've encountered in most men I've known for years. That deserves support." Heat rose in Helena's cheeks, and she looked away, flustered by the directness of his words. "I'd appreciate any help Mr. Patterson can spare," she managed. "And I'm grateful for what you did today. You likely saved my life." "Then we're even, because you likely saved mine from dying of boredom at Patterson's." The small smile that accompanied this surprised her, and Sam laughed outright. "Stay for supper at least," Helena found herself saying. "It's the least I can offer after everything." Cole hesitated, then nodded. "I'd like that, thank you." The afternoon passed in the steady rhythm of ranch work. Cole proved himself useful without being asked, helping Will repair a section of corral fence while Helena and Sam handled the evening feeding. She found herself glancing toward the corral more often than necessary, watching the easy way Cole worked, his movements efficient and practiced. He and Will talked in the shorthand of experienced cattlemen, and she heard Will's occasional laugh, a sound that had been rare since her father's death. Supper was simple, beans and cornbread with bacon, but Helena set the table with her mother's good plates, a small vanity she indulged because having company felt like a return to normal life. The 4 of them ate in the main room, conversation flowing more easily than it had in months. Cole asked intelligent questions about the ranch's operation, and Helena found herself explaining her plans for expanding the horse breeding program, dreams she'd barely articulated even to herself. "Your father taught you well," Cole observed, mopping up bean juice with his cornbread. Most ranchers focus on cattle and treat horses as afterthoughts. But there's real money in good stock, especially with the army expansion in the territory. He always said horses were what separated a successful outfit from a struggling one, Helena agreed. I've got 3 mares in foal right now, bred to a stallion that's got army bloodlines. If the foals are sound, I can sell them for $25 each, maybe more. That'd put a dent in your operating costs, Will added. Give you breathing room to hire more help if needed. The conversation eventually turned to Thornton and the escalating situation. Cole's expression grew serious as he listened to Will describe the harassment of the past months, the small acts of sabotage that couldn't quite be proven but were clearly intended to create problems. He's trying to make it too expensive for you to stay, Cole said. Every repair, every lost animal, every hour spent fixing what's been damaged is money and time you don't have. Eventually, he figures you'll decide it's easier to sell than to keep fighting. He figured wrong, Helena said flatly. This is my home. My parents are buried on that hill beyond the barn. Every memory I have worth keeping is tied to this land. I'll die before I let him take it. Hopefully it won't come to that, Cole said gently. But you need to be prepared for him to push harder now that you've made your position clear. Men like Thornton, they see a woman's refusal as a personal insult, like you're saying they're not worthy of your respect. Because to them, women are property that comes with the land, Helena said bitterly. Thornton told me once that if I married him, he'd let me keep running the Double C as his wife, as if that was some generous offer instead of him trying to take everything I am. Cole's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath the scar. Your consent wasn't asked for because it was not needed, he said again, but this time with barely controlled anger. That's the thinking that justifies every kind of theft and violation. It should always be asked. Always. And the answer should always be respected, whether it's yes or no. The fierce certainty in his voice sent a shiver through Helena that had nothing to do with fear. She'd grown up around cowboys and ranchers, men who were often respectful but rarely thoughtful about such things. Cole's words suggested a depth of consideration she hadn't expected from a man who made his living in one of the roughest territories in America. After supper, Cole helped wash dishes despite her protests, working alongside her at the basin while Will and Sam headed to the bunkhouse. The domesticity of the moment felt strange and comfortable at once, and Helena found herself acutely aware of his presence beside her, the brush of his sleeve against hers, the low rumble of his voice as he asked where things should be put away. I should head back, he said when the last plate was dried and stacked. Patterson likes his hands in before full dark, and I've still got an hour's ride. Helena walked him out to where his horse waited, patient and ground-tied. The summer evening was perfect, the air cooling after the day's heat, the mountains painted purple and gold by the setting sun. She wanted to ask him to stay longer, wanted to prolong this feeling of not being alone, but she held her tongue. Cole gathered his reins, then turned to face her. Miss Campbell, I'd like your permission to call on you again. Not just about Thornton or ranch business, but because I'd like to know you better. If that's something you'd welcome, I'll come by on Sunday after church. If it's not, I'll respect that and won't trouble you with anything beyond helping deal with this situation. The request, so formally and respectfully made, touched something deep in Helena's chest. I'd like that, she heard herself say. I'd like that very much. His smile was slow and genuine, transforming his serious face into something warm. Then I'll see you Sunday, if not before. He swung into the saddle with easy grace, then tipped his hat. Keep your rifle close and don't hesitate to fire a warning shot if anyone approaches who shouldn't. I'll talk to Patterson tonight about getting you some extra hands. Helena watched him ride away until horse and rider were just a silhouette against the darkening sky, then turned back to her empty house with a heart that felt less heavy than it had in months. The next 3 days passed in a strange state of heightened awareness. Patterson proved as good as Cole's word, sending 2 experienced hands to the Double C with instructions to help with regular work while keeping watch for trouble. Their presence made it possible for Helena to ride into Cody to meet with her father's lawyer, a tedious but necessary session reviewing property documents and ensuring everything was legally airtight. Thornton made no direct moves, but his presence hung over everything like a gathering storm. Helena saw him once, across the street in Cody, watching her with an expression that mixed anger and calculation. She held his gaze until he looked away, a small victory that still left her checking over her shoulder. Cole appeared Friday evening, apologetic for not coming sooner. "Been moving cattle to Summer Range," he explained. "Patterson's running 1,500 head, and we've been in the saddle dawn to dusk getting them settled." He looked exhausted, dust-caked and sun-beaten, but his eyes lit when he saw her, and Helena felt an answering warmth bloom in her chest. She insisted he wash up and stay for supper, and this time their conversation ranged beyond ranch business to books they'd read, places they'd seen, dreams they carried quietly. "I always wanted to see San Francisco," Helena admitted. "My mother had a cousin who moved there in the 50s during the gold rush. Her letters made it sound like another world, ships from every nation and buildings 3 stories high." "Cities have their appeal," Cole agreed, "but they make me restless after a few days. Too many people, too much noise. I like seeing horizon in every direction, being able to hear myself think." "Is that why you stay in ranch work?" "Partly." He considered his words carefully, a habit she was learning characterized him. "Mostly it's because I'm good at it and there's satisfaction in work done well. But also because ranch life is honest in a way few things are. A cow doesn't care about your family name or how much education you have. It only cares if you're good at your job. There's a freedom in that. Until someone like Thornton decides might makes right," Helena said. "Even then, you can choose how you respond. You can bend or break or stand firm. The choice is always yours, even if the consequences aren't always fair." He met her eyes across the table. "You're choosing to stand firm. That takes real courage. Or stupidity," Helena said wryly. "Some days it's hard to tell the difference. The difference is having something worth fighting for. Stupidity is fighting for nothing. Courage is fighting for something that matters, even when you're scared." They talked until Will pointedly cleared his throat from the bunkhouse doorway, reminding Cole of the late hour. This time when the cowboy left, Helena let herself acknowledge what she was feeling, the flutter in her stomach when he smiled. The way her day felt brighter knowing she might see him, the warmth that settled in her chest at his careful respect for her choices and her voice. Sunday came bright and clear, and Helena took extra care with her appearance, choosing her good dress, the green calico with ivory buttons that brought out the red tones in her brown hair. The church service in Cody was well attended as always, and she felt the weight of curious stares when Cole slid into the pew beside her, hat in hand, freshly shaved and looking uncomfortable in a starched collar. Reverend Matthews preached on loving your neighbor, which seemed pointed given the tensions in the community. Helena caught Thornton's glare from across the aisle and refused to acknowledge it, focusing instead on the hymnal she shared with Cole, their shoulders touching as they followed the words. After service, several ranch families invited themselves along for the ride back to the Double C, an impromptu gathering that turned into an afternoon social. Helena understood what was happening the community closing ranks, making it clear through their presence that she had allies. The Johnson family brought a basket of fried chicken, the Sawyers contributed fresh baked bread, and Mary Patterson, the ranch owner's wife, arrived with 2 pies and her husband in tow. "Heard you've been having some trouble," Patterson said to Helena, his weathered face serious. "Want you to know you've got friends here. Thornton's been pushing boundaries with several of us, but what he's doing to you goes beyond business competition. It's harassment, pure and simple. We're thinking of filing a formal complaint with the territorial marshal," Dan Johnson added. "If enough of us document the problems, maybe we can get some legal protection." The afternoon dissolved into serious discussion mixed with children playing and women sharing news and recipes. Cole stayed near Helena, but not obtrusively so, content to listen and help where needed. She watched him hoist one of the Sawyer toddlers onto his shoulders to see over the corral fence, listened to him explain horse training to the fascinated child, and felt her heart settle into certainty. When the families finally departed as the sun began its descent, Cole lingered, helping her clean up the aftermath of impromptu hospitality. They worked in comfortable silence, and Helena felt the rightness of it, this partnership in small tasks. "Thank you for today," she said when the last dish was put away. "For coming to church, for staying, for all of it." "I wanted to be here," Cole said simply. "Helena, I need to tell you something, and I want you to listen all the way through before you respond." The seriousness in his tone made her still, and he took a breath, choosing his words with evident care. "I know we've only known each other a week. I know you've got every reason to be wary of men making claims or demanding things from you. So I want to be clear, I'm not demanding anything, and I'm not making assumptions about what you want or need." He met her eyes steadily. "But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't falling for you. The way you face down danger, the way you honor your family's legacy, the intelligence and humor you bring to every conversation. You're remarkable, and spending time with you has become the best part of my days." Helena's breath caught, her heart suddenly pounding. "I want to court you properly, with your full consent and blessing," Cole continued. "I want to come calling, to get to know you better, to see if what I'm feeling might be something you could feel too. But if that's not what you want, if you'd rather I just help with Thornton and otherwise keep my distance, I'll respect that absolutely. Your answer is yours to give, and I'll abide by it either way." The care with which he asked, the space he gave her to choose freely, made Helena's decision easy. She crossed the small distance between them and took his hand, marveling at how right the simple contact felt. "I'd like that very much," she said softly. "I've been feeling something too, something I wasn't sure I should trust because everything's been so chaotic. But when you're here, things feel less impossible. When you talk about choice and consent, about what matters and what's worth fighting for, I feel seen in a way I rarely have. So yes, Cole Lawson, you have my consent and my blessing to court me properly." His answering smile was brilliant, and then his free hand came up to cup her cheek with infinite gentleness. "May I kiss you?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Yes," Helena breathed, and then his lips were on hers, soft and sure and full of promise. The kiss was brief, respectful of the newness between them, but it sent warmth cascading through Helena's entire body. When they parted, Cole rested his forehead against hers, both of them breathing a bit unsteadily. "I should go," he said reluctantly. "But I'll be back Tuesday evening if that suits you. Patterson's given me permission to split my time between his spread and helping here until the Thornton situation is resolved." "Tuesday suits me fine," Helena managed, still dizzy from the kiss. "And Cole, thank you for asking." "Always," he promised, and the weight he put behind that single word told her he meant it for far more than just kisses. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange dance between danger and courtship. Thornton's harassment escalated, with fence wire cut and cattle scattered, but the increased presence of hands from neighboring ranches made it impossible for him to do serious damage. Cole was at the Double C more often than not, ostensibly helping with repairs and security, but stealing moments alone with Helena whenever possible. They talked endlessly, sharing histories and hopes, discovering alignment in values and humor in each other's company. Cole told her about growing up on the Kansas farm, about watching his mother face down bankers and weather, and the grinding work of running land alone. Helena spoke of her own childhood, of a father who taught her that competence mattered more than convention, of losing her mother young and learning to be strong because tears didn't mend fences or feed cattle. "You ever resent it?" Cole asked one evening as they walked the fence line, ostensibly checking for damage but really just stealing time together. Having to be strong all the time, never getting to just be taken care of, Helena considered the question seriously. "Sometimes," she admitted. "Especially right after Papa died. I was so tired of decisions and responsibilities and everyone looking to me for answers I didn't have. But then, I remember that strength isn't about never needing help. It's about choosing when to stand alone and when to accept support. The key is that it has to be my choice, not something imposed on me." "And is this," Cole gestured between them, his meaning clear, "something you're choosing?" "Every day," Helena said firmly. "You've never made me feel weak for needing help, and you've never tried to take over or fix things without asking. You stand beside me, not in front of me. That's everything." Cole pulled her close, kissing her with more heat than their previous careful exchanges, and Helena felt the carefully controlled desire in him, the want held in check by his respect for her pace and comfort. It made her bold, and she pressed closer, letting him feel her own need. "Helena," he groaned against her mouth, then pulled back with visible effort. "We should slow down." "Why?" she asked, breathless and a bit reckless. "Because it's not proper, because people might talk." "Because I want to do this right," Cole said seriously. "I want you to know I'm here for more than this as much as I want this. I want you to be sure." His words steadied her, reminded her of all the reasons she was falling in love with this careful, thoughtful man. "I am sure," she said, "but I appreciate your restraint and your respect." "Always asking," Cole murmured, kissing her forehead. "Never assuming." The situation with Thornton came to a head on a scorching day in mid-July. Helena was working in the barn when she heard horses approaching fast, and she grabbed her rifle before running outside. Cole and Will were already moving toward the sound, and what emerged from the dust made her heart sink. Marcus Thornton rode at the head of 6 men, all armed, all wearing expressions that suggested violence was on the menu. Helena planted herself in front of her house, rifle held ready but not yet aimed, very aware that Cole had positioned himself slightly to her left, his hand resting on his revolver. "Miss Campbell," Thornton said, his voice carrying false pleasantry. "I've come to make one final offer on your property. $25,000 all cash, deed signed over today." "No," Helena said flatly. "I've told you repeatedly, Mr. Thornton, the Double C is not for sale at any price." "You see, that's the problem," Thornton said, his facade cracking. "I don't think you understand your situation. You're a woman alone, trying to run a ranch in country that doesn't suffer fools. Accidents happen out here. Fires, stampedes, things that leave nothing worth owning." "That sounds an awful lot like a threat," Cole said quietly, and something in his tone made several of Thornton's men shift nervously in their saddles. "Who asked you, saddle tramp?" Thornton sneered. "This is between me and the lady." The lady already gave you her answer, Cole responded. Multiple times from what I understand. Your consent wasn't asked for because it was not needed. That's what you think, isn't it, Thornton? You think because you're bigger and richer and meaner you can just take what you want. But you're wrong. Her consent matters. Her choices matter. And she said no. Her consent, Thornton laughed harshly. This is business, boy. Sentiment doesn't build empires. No, but theft and intimidation don't build legitimate ones either, Cole shot back. You can't force her to sell, and if you try violence, you'll answer for it. There are witnesses all over this territory documenting your harassment. The territorial marshal already has a file on you. Push this, and you'll lose everything. Thornton's face purpled with rage, and for a moment Helena thought he might actually draw his weapon. But Patterson chose that moment to ride up from the east pasture with 4 of his hands, all armed, all looking grimly purposeful. Heard voices, Patterson said mildly. Thought I'd check on my boys working this section. Everything all right here, Miss Campbell? The odds had shifted dramatically, and even Thornton could see it. His hand moved away from his gun, and he gathered his reins with jerky movements. This isn't over, he snarled at Helena. You'll regret crossing me. The only thing I regret, Helena said clearly, is not filing legal charges against you sooner. But that changes tomorrow. Sheriff's expecting me first thing, and I'll be documenting every instance of harassment, vandalism, and threat. You come on my land again without invitation, and I'll have you arrested for trespassing. Are we clear? For a long moment, Thornton stared at her with pure hatred, then wheeled his horse and spurred away, his men following in a cloud of dust. Helena's legs went weak once they were out of sight, and Cole was there instantly, steadying her with a hand on her elbow. You were magnificent, he said quietly, pride shining in his eyes. I was terrified, she admitted. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Cole reminded her. It's standing firm despite it, and you stood firm. Patterson dismounted, his expression serious. He's not going to let this go, Miss Campbell. Man like that, he's been humiliated in front of his men and half the territory. He'll try something else. Then we'll be ready, Helena said, finding strength in the community around her. I'm done being afraid. This is my home and I'm keeping it. True to her word, Helena rode into Cody the next morning with Cole beside her and filed formal complaints with both the sheriff and a letter to the territorial marshal detailing months of harassment. The lawyer her father had used helped her draft a civil suit for damages and restraining orders. It was expensive and time-consuming, but Patterson and the Johnsons helped cover costs, considering it an investment in stopping Thornton's predatory practices before they spread further. The legal process crawled through the hot summer weeks, but something shifted in the territory. Other ranchers who'd been silently suffering Thornton's intimidation came forward with their own complaints. The territorial marshal, a hard man named Gaines, arrived in Cody and began a formal investigation. And through it all, Cole remained a steady presence at Helena's side. Their courtship deepened as summer ripened toward fall. Cole taught Helena to quick draw, insisting that if she was going to carry a weapon, she should know how to use it effectively. She taught him her mother's recipes, laughing at his attempts to master biscuit dough. They stole kisses in the barn, held hands during evening walks, and talked about futures that seemed increasingly intertwined. "What do you want, Helena?" Cole asked one evening in late August as they sat on her porch watching stars emerge. "If you could have anything, what would your life look like?" She leaned against his shoulder, comfortable with the contact that had become natural between them. "I want the Double C to thrive, to prove that a woman can run a successful ranch. I want to expand the horse breeding program, maybe become known for producing quality stock. I want a family, children who grow up knowing this land like I do." She paused, then added quietly, "I want you. If that's something you want too." Cole's arm tightened around her. "It's exactly what I want." I was just waiting for the right time to ask. He shifted so he could see her face, his expression serious. "Helena Campbell, I'm in love with you. I think I started falling the moment I saw you refuse to back down, even with bullets flying. Everything since has just made me more certain. You're strong, smart, funny, and more courageous than anyone I've ever met. Will you marry me? Will you let me stand beside you as your partner and your husband, building this ranch and this life together?" Joy bloomed in Helena's chest, so intense it almost hurt. "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at once. "Yes, absolutely yes." Cole kissed her deeply, his hands cradling her face like she was precious, and Helena felt the last pieces of her guarded heart open fully. When they finally parted, both breathing hard, he pulled a simple gold ring from his pocket. "It was my mother's," he said. "The only thing I kept from the farm. I'd be honored if you'd wear it." The ring slid onto her finger perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. Helena traced the worn gold, thinking about the woman who'd raised Cole to be the man he was, the woman whose strength and dignity had shaped his understanding of what mattered. "I wish I could have met her," Helena said. "She would have loved you," Cole assured her. She always said the measure of a person was how they treated those with less power. You've got ranch hands who'd ride through fire for you, neighbors who consider you friend, not just ally, and even people in town who barely know you spoke up for you against Thornton. That says everything about who you are." They sat together in the gathering darkness, planning and dreaming. They'd marry in the fall after the cattle were sold and the season's work was settled. Cole would move to the Double C permanently, Patterson having already given his blessing and promised to help find a replacement hand. They'd build up the horse breeding program, maybe add another bedroom to the house in a year or two when children came. "I want to do this right," Cole said. "Court you properly, give the community time to adjust, let everyone see we're building something legitimate and lasting. People are going to talk no matter what," Helena pointed out practically. "We might as well give them something good to talk about." The marshal's investigation concluded in early September with Thornton arrested and charged with conspiracy, intimidation, and attempted theft through coercion. The evidence was overwhelming, compiled from dozens of testimonies and documented incidents. Thornton's ranch was placed in receivership while legal proceedings continued, his operations ground to a halt. Helena sat in the courthouse in Cody when the verdict came down, Cole's hand warm in hers. Guilty on all counts, with significant fines and a prison sentence of 5 years. It felt like vindication and relief and the final lifting of a weight she'd carried too long. "It's over," she whispered to Cole. "It's over," he agreed, kissing her temple. "Now the real work begins." They were married on a perfect October afternoon with half the territory in attendance. The wedding taking place in the small Cody church, but the celebration spilling out to the Double C Ranch. Reverend Matthews presided, speaking about partnership and respect, about two people choosing each other freely, and building a life on mutual consent and love. Helena wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit, and Cole wore new black trousers and a pressed white shirt that made his gray eyes look silver. "Do you, Helena Marie Campbell, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold in sickness and health for richer or poorer, as long as you both shall live?" "I do," Helena said clearly, meaning every syllable. "And do you, Cole Thomas Lawson, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold in sickness and health for richer or poorer, as long as you both shall live?" "I do," Cole said, his voice rough with emotion. "Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Wyoming, I pronounce you husband and wife. Cole, you may kiss your bride." And he did, thoroughly and with enough enthusiasm that several guests laughed and cheered. Helena felt the joy of it down to her bones, this public claiming of each other, this choice they'd both made freely. The celebration lasted into the evening, with music and dancing and more food than seemed possible. Helena danced with her husband, with Will and Patterson and every man who'd stood beside her during the hardest months. She hugged the women who'd offered friendship and support, accepted congratulations from neighbors who defended her right to refuse what she didn't want and choose what she did. As the stars came out and guests began the journey back to their own ranches, Cole swept Helena up in his arms, carrying her across the threshold of the house that was now fully theirs, shared and equal. "Mrs. Lawson," he murmured against her hair. "Mr. Lawson," she responded, laughing. "You know I'm keeping Campbell for business. The Double C brand stays as is." "I wouldn't have it any other way," Cole assured her, setting her gently on her feet in the bedroom. "Helena Campbell Lawson, rancher and horse breeder extraordinaire. It has a nice ring to it." What followed was tender and passionate, Cole's careful attention to her consent never wavering even in the midst of desire. "Is this all right?" he asked repeatedly. "Do you want this? Tell me if anything's too much." And Helena answered with words and touches, the freedom to say yes because she'd always been free to say no, making everything sweeter. Afterward, wrapped in sheets and each other, Helena traced the scar on his jaw. "How did you get this?" "Horse kicked me when I was 15, Cole said. "I was being careless, not paying attention to warning signs. Learned a hard lesson about respecting boundaries, even with animals." "Everything comes back to consent and respect with you," Helena observed, not complaining. "Because everything worth having requires both," Cole said seriously. "Love, loyalty, partnership, all of it only matters if it's freely given. The moment you take someone's choice away, you've destroyed the foundation of anything real." Helena kissed him deeply, pouring everything she felt into the contact. "I choose you," she said when they parted. "Every day, every way I choose you." "And I choose you," Cole responded. "Always." The years that followed proved them right to trust their choices. The Double C thrived under their joint management, Cole's experience and Helena's vision combining to build something stronger than either could have achieved alone. The horse breeding program became regionally famous, their stock sought after for quality and temperament. The cattle operation expanded carefully, never beyond what they could manage well. Their first child arrived in late summer of 1887, a son they named Thomas William after both grandfathers. Helena labored through the August heat with the town midwife attending, and Cole held her hand through every contraction, his face pale but determined. "You can do this," he murmured during a particularly hard stretch. "You're the strongest person I know." "Easy for you to say," Helena gasped. "You're not the one pushing a human out of your body." But when Thomas finally arrived, red-faced and screaming, Helena forgot the pain in the overwhelming wave of love. Cole cradled his son with wonder, tears streaming unchecked down his face. "He's perfect," Cole said hoarsely. "Helena, you're amazing. Thank you." 17 months later, their daughter arrived with less drama but equal joy, a calm baby they named Catherine Rose after both grandmothers. Thomas was fascinated by his little sister, wanting to help with everything, and Helena's heart felt so full sometimes she thought it might burst. Cole proved to be a natural father, patient and playful, teaching Thomas to ride before the boy was 3 and singing Catherine to sleep with old cowboy ballads. He changed his work schedule to be present for meals and bedtime, believing that being a father meant more than just providing financially. "My father was gone so much I barely knew him before he died," Cole explained when Helena questioned whether he was taking on too much. "I don't want that for our children. I want them to know they're loved, that both their parents are present and engaged in their lives." The Double C continued to grow, both in acreage and reputation. They bought out a neighbor's property when he retired, expanding their water access. They hired more hands, built a larger barn, added rooms to the house as the family expanded. Their third child, a daughter named Grace, arrived in 1890, followed 2 years later by another son, James. Through it all, Cole never lost his fundamental respect for consent and choice. He asked before kissing Helena, even years into their marriage. He taught their children to ask before touching each other's toys, before hugging friends, before assuming anything. And he remained vigilant about the power dynamics around them, speaking up when he saw injustice, helping neighbors who faced pressure from those with more resources or influence. The Thornton situation faded into history as the man himself finished his prison sentence and left the territory. His former ranch sold off to settle debts and judgments. The community settled into peaceable prosperity, ranchers cooperating more than competing, building a network of mutual support that benefited everyone. Helena watched her children grow, watched the ranch thrive, watched her husband age gracefully into his 30s and 40s, the gray threading through his dark hair making him more distinguished rather than less attractive. They made love often, their physical connection never fading, though it evolved from the urgent passion of early marriage to something deeper and more knowing. "I love you," Cole said one evening in 1895 as they sat on their porch, watching Thomas work a young horse in the corral while Catherine and Grace played nearby and baby James napped inside. "More than the day we married, which I didn't think was possible." "Love grows when it's tended well," Helena said, leaning into his side as she'd done countless times before. "We've built something good here, Cole, something real and lasting." "Because we built it together as partners," Cole agreed. "Because we chose each other freely and kept choosing each other every day since." Thomas called out then, excited about the horse's progress, and they walked down to admire his work, their son glowing under their joint praise. Helena looked around at her family, her home, her life, and felt profound gratitude for the bullet that had missed her a decade ago, for the cowboy who'd stepped in to help, for all the choices that had led to this moment. That evening, after the children were in bed and the house was quiet, Helena found Cole in the barn checking on a mare about to foal. She slipped her arms around him from behind, resting her cheek against his back. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, covering her hands with his. "About consent and choices," Helena said. "About how you said my consent wasn't asked for because it was not needed, that it should always be asked. You were right, Cole, about everything. Asking matters. Respecting answers matters. Building on that foundation matters." Cole turned in her arms, pulling her close. "You taught me as much as I taught you," he said. "You showed me that strength and softness aren't opposites, that a woman can be both fierce and feminine, that partnership means supporting each other's dreams, not limiting them." They stood together in the lamplight barn, surrounded by the quiet sounds of horses and the sweet smell of hay. Two people who'd chosen each other freely and built a life on mutual respect and unwavering love. The mare nickered softly, shifting in her stall, and Cole released Helena reluctantly. "I should stay with her, it might be tonight." "Then I'll stay too," Helena decided, "like we do everything else, together." They settled into the clean straw outside the stall, Helena tucked against Cole's side, his arm around her shoulders. The mare labored through the night hours, and near dawn, a foal arrived safely, all long legs and wonder. They helped clean the newborn, ensured it nursed properly, then walked back to the house hand in hand as the sun painted the Wyoming sky in shades of pink and gold. Their children would wake soon, demanding breakfast and attention, and the day's work would begin in earnest. But for now, in the quiet between night and day, Helena Campbell Lawson and Cole Thomas Lawson stood on their porch and looked out over the land they'd defended and built together. Two people who'd understood from the beginning that love without consent was nothing, that respect without choice was worthless, and that partnership built on those foundations could weather any storm. "No regrets?" Cole asked softly. "Not a single one," Helena assured him. Only that I didn't meet you sooner," Cole said, kissing her as the sun broke fully over the mountains. "But we've got all the time ahead to make up for it." And they did, building their ranch and their family through years that brought challenges and triumphs, sorrows and joys. They weathered hard winters and dry summers, economic depressions and personal losses. They celebrated their children's milestones, from first steps to weddings, and welcomed grandchildren with the same joy they'd felt at their own children's births. Through it all, Cole never stopped asking, never stopped ensuring Helena's consent and honoring her choices. And Helena never stopped appreciating that respect, never took for granted the gift of being seen and valued as a full partner and equal. When they were old and gray, sitting on that same porch watching great-grandchildren play in the yard, Helena would look at her husband and marvel at the life they'd built from that violent morning in Cody. The bullet that had missed, the cowboy who'd intervened, the choice to trust and love and build together. It had all led to this rich, full life surrounded by family and love. "Best decision I ever made," she'd say, squeezing his weathered hand. "Mine too," Cole would agree, his gray eyes still clear and sharp, still looking at her with the same devotion he'd shown from the beginning. "Asking you to marry me second best. You saying yes, that was the real gift." "I'd say yes again," Helena would assure him. "Every single time." And in the golden afternoon light of their Wyoming ranch, surrounded by the legacy they'd built on respect and love and freely given consent, Cole would pull his wife close and kiss her with all the passion of their youth, all the tenderness of their years together, and all the certainty that they'd chosen well and been chosen in return. The Double C Ranch prospered for generations, passed down through children who'd been raised to understand that consent matters, that respect is fundamental, that partnership is built on equality and choice. The story of how it began, with a bullet and a cowboy and a woman who refused to bend, became family legend, told and retold to remind each generation that standing firm for what matters, that asking rather than taking, that building on mutual respect rather than assumed power. These were the values that created something lasting and true. Helena Campbell Lawson and Cole Thomas Lawson lived long, full lives surrounded by love they'd chosen and built together, proving every day that the foundation of anything worth having is freely given consent, respected boundaries, and the courage to stand firm for what truly matters. Their love story, born from violence but rooted in respect, became a testament to the power of choice, the importance of asking, and the profound beauty of two people building a life together as true equals and partners in every sense of the word.